Growing up, we lived life at home and we didn't do a ton of running around. My mom kept our schedule pretty lax, and I didn't feel rushed around from one place to the next. And I'm so thankful that I got to grow up in that way, because now, as an adult and a mother myself, I still don't like that overhanging feeling of having to be somewhere. And I'm honestly the most happy when I'm at home. I really tried to be intentional about the time that we spend at home, because we only have so many hours in the day that we get to spend with my husband, and his job is pretty stressful. And so when he comes home, I don't want him to come home and feel like we have to just run around and be all of these different places. I want it to be a time for us to be able to connect as a family. So we've kind of suck into this evening routine where I make dinner and we eat. And then I'll clean up and we go outside and walk around and we do random things. Sometimes we'll do chores. Sometimes we'll just walk around the farm and enjoy the sunset. Sometimes we'll have fires and things like that. And then we'll come in and lounge around in the living room a little bit and just enjoy each other's company. And to me, the slow evenings are taking time to savor the day and the beauty of the here and now, and focusing on quality time instead of the quantity. So we know that we are limited on the amount of time that we get to spend together as a family. So we really want that time to be quality, and we're just trying to be present in the moment together. We had a bunch of beans ready to be picked from the garden, and so Dave had went out and picked all of a big mess of beans, and so it was time to get these ready to cook. And I decided that since we had our garden fresh green beans and a lot of our garden corn all ready to be picked, I would go ahead and make a country vegetable plate for dinner. So on this evening, that is what we ended up having for dinner. So I made some garden fresh green beans with ham hock, and I simmered that, and then I made some cream corn and some jalapeno cheddar cornbread with some jalapenos from our garden. And then I made some cooked cabbage, and I also sliced a few tomatoes, and we had some green onions. So it was a different meal than what we would normally have, but since we had all of this delicious garden fresh food ready to eat, I decided that we would have that for dinner, and we really enjoyed it. I think I've mentioned this before, but our home actually sits on 19 acres that are mostly wooded, and we've cleared about 5 of those acres, so we aren't farming the full 19. Sometimes I get a little ahead of myself about growing and scaling our farm, but I try to remind myself that less can be more, and we want to enjoy what we're doing right now. And not that we wouldn't be happy to expand and scale the farm, but right now we're good with what we're doing and the time that we're devoting to our farm. I've had to really let go and simplify our life inside of our home in order to be able to work both outside and still take care of the homemaking things I need to do inside of our home. On social media, we see a lot of beautifully decorated and curated homes and farmhouses, and they're gorgeous, but a lot of times that's just not the reality for most of us that are living on a homestead or trying to farm and things like that. I like to keep my home clean, and I do like to decorate and make it a cozy space for my family. But I also try to minimize the clutter and think about the functionality of our home. That way that it's just easier for me to clean and I can go through and pick up. So I've downsized toys and clothing items and just stuff that we don't need. And I also want my kids to spend more time outside. So anything that they can do outside, I'm always happy to find things for them that are exciting and fun for them to go outside. That way it draws them outside instead of inside. Our upstairs in our home is finished, and it's about 1,200 square feet, but our basement is not finished, and we're currently working on finishing that. But I like that I can go through and pick up my home fairly quickly without it feeling super overwhelming to me. And although I did have to learn when we moved to a smaller home, because we did downsize a little, was that I did have to get rid of things just in order to clear up some space. but I do love that it's so much easier to maintain and I can have time to do things outside and not feel like that everything is going crazy on the inside of my home. When I'm working up a lot of our garden produce, one of the easiest ways for me to keep things kind of clean on the inside and inside my kitchen and things like that is to just do some of these things outside on the porch, because I don't want all of these little strings and things like that from the corn to just get all over the place, and I just prefer to do this outside on the patio. So I was thinking actually another idea, if you are someone that has or growing a garden and you're trying to process a large amount of produce and vegetables and things like that, would be to get just a folding table in a shady area and just kind of work up your vegetables that way. I know that you can't do everything outside because you don't want a lot of bugs and stuff like that, but doing all this stuff outside really does help minimize the cleanup afterwards versus inside of your home. One of my most favorite side dishes that my mom used to make growing up was the green beans with ham hock. Sometimes she would use bacon, sometimes ham hock, but you just cannot go wrong with beans and pork together. Just like pinto beans and ham hock, it's just so good whenever you simmer it slowly on the stovetop over a period of a few hours and let all of those delicious flavors mend together. So having this for dinner, I was looking forward to it. I had put a lot of work into the garden and picking the corn and breaking the beans and getting everything ready for dinner. I was starving by the time it was actually all done, and I can honestly say that the green beans did not disappoint at all. In order to cook them, or the way that I cook them, some people put them in a crock pot with their bacon or their ham hock, but I just put mine in a stainless steel pot with some filtered water. We did get our filtration system from Amazon. I will try to link that below because it is a if you have regular water, I would definitely recommend getting some kind of filtration system. I use this to cook with all the time, and it just makes me feel a lot better about the water that we're drinking, because we do drink a ton of water. But anyway, that was a side note. But back to the green beans, you just boil them in water with some salt and ham hock and just bring them to a boil and then turn them down to simmer and put the lid on and just let them sit there for several hours, and all of that will cook together and you'll just have a really delicious side dish. Or like what we were having, we did just a bunch of different vegetables for a country vegetable plate, and it was so good. This year in Kentucky, a lot of people struggled with getting their corn to grow properly because we started out with a super dry or super wet planting season, and then we had a lot of dry weather, and then we had a lot of wet weather again. And so I know corn didn't do great for a lot of people, but we actually did get to harvest some of our corn from the garden. So this is what we grew. And I was able to work that up. This is incredible corn. My husband planted it, and so it's different than what we normally do. He normally does peaches and cream, but this is what he did this year, and I was really happy with it. I felt like that it tasted just as good, and so I decided to just make a regular cream corn with ours. I just went up and picked one row of our corn, and then I shucked it, washed it, and then I cut it off of the cob and put it in a pot with some butter and salt and cooked it on low and let it just kind of cook together with the salt and the butter. And also, when you're making cream corn, you want to scrape the corn. As you're cutting the corn off the cob, you want to scrape the corn and kind of get those juices out of the cob. So that's how you get a delicious, yummy, creamy corn. But I went ahead and cooked a huge batch of this up because I knew that whatever we didn't eat, I would just stick in a quart-size Ziploc bag and freeze it. And so I got one full quart frozen out of one row. So we ate some, and then I was able to freeze one quart-size bag. And then I think we have 2 or 3 rows left for me to pick. So I'm going to have to get out there and get started doing that. I used to laugh because I would get the kids' toys and then they would turn around with boxes and water bottles and random supplies that they would find in the house and start making things and crafting things. And I don't know if I just have extremely crafty children or if that's what all kids do, because they'll find just random things. And so Dave just got a new recliner because he's getting ready to have a procedure done and he has to be able to lay in the recliner and rest. And so the kids had the foam from the recliner that it was all wrapped up in, and they just started. Jackson was building little Lego houses and different things with it, and they had cut it up, and then Kennedy was drawing on hers and making little circles and cakes. And I just think it's so funny because I like to capture the kids in these moments of their creativity, building forts, going outside and making mud cakes and things like that, because that's really what I want them doing anyway. I don't want them glued to a screen all the time. I want them enjoying their time being outside, being creative, and doing these things. But I always say, just get a kids a box and they'll literally spend hours playing with it. You get them a toy and they're done with it in 5 minutes. So as I'm cooking, you all kind of got to see a glimpse of what is going on with my family as I'm in the kitchen. And as you can see, I have tons of dirty dishes and dishes in the sink, and that is just typical for our family in our home. And I tell my mom all the time, I'm like, I promise I clean every single day, but I'm like, it just feels like it's never really clean. And she tells me and reminds me often, she says, it's lived in, Cassie, it's a lived in home. And I have to remind myself of that too, is that we have 3 small children and we're working on the farm, we're doing things, and I cook very, very often. And so because I cook so much and I cook a lot from scratch, I do dirty up a lot of dishes. And so I do try to clean my home up in the evening before bed and get it kind of just prepped and ready for the following day, because I know I'm going to need to get up and get breakfast started and kind of do the whole thing over again. And so I do like to try to get it cleaned up, but I do remind myself of, all the time, I have a lived-in home and that is okay. And one of our most favorite side items is cornbread. And I know we're from the South and that probably isn't surprising, but one of my favorite ways to have cornbread is with either herbs added in with it, with salt and pepper, or jalapeno cheddar cornbread. Dave is the master at fermentation, and he ferments all of our jalapenos throughout the garden season and saves them so that we can make salsa and we can put it in cornbread and we can use it for chili and things like that. And so I love adding our fermented jalapenos to our cornbread. I also made the cream corn, and then I boiled some cabbage to go with our country vegetable plate. And I love having cabbage on hand. We do grow some cabbage, but our cabbages didn't do so great this year. I ended up going to a local Amish store and purchasing 2 large heads of cabbage. I did do some sauerkraut earlier in the season, and we go through that pretty quickly in the fall and winter months. And then I like to just have cabbage on hand because you can make coleslaw, you can roast it, boil it, saute it, cook it, whatever. You can do so many different things with it. I feel like that adding it to our dinners is just a really good healthy option for us. And so we had the boiled cabbage to go with our country vegetable plate as well. In the evening time, I really try to get things put away and get my kitchen picked up and back in order, because I know that when I wake up the next morning, I don't want to have the dishes in the sink dirty, the counters dirty, things like that I have to kind of pick up from the night before, because I know that the morning is going to be busy and there's lots of things that I'll need to get done. I don't get it done every night, don't get me wrong, but I do try to get those things done so I'm not having to worry about it the next day. So I'll wipe my counters down, or I will dry dishes or load the dishwasher, wash dishes, things like that, and go through the house and kind of pick up and get it put a little bit back in order so that I can focus the next day on the tasks that need done, and I don't have all of this stuff kind of lingering over my head. So I'll go through and sweep the floors, pick things up, wipe the table, wipe counters, wipe appliances, just different things like that. And that way everything just feels kind of calm and in order, and I feel like that I can really be more present with my time outside if I want to go outside and do things, or if I want to spend time with the family, things like that. I don't have all of this kind of hanging over my head. So I do like to try to have dinner done a little bit earlier whenever I can. It depends on Dave's work schedule, but on the weekends we do tend to have dinner done a little bit earlier than during the weeknights. And so I do like to try to get it done earlier if I can, just so that I have that little pocket of time, a little bit more time to kind of clean up and get things put back together. And then after I have all of that kind of taken care of, I feel like I can be free to go outside and enjoy sitting by the fire pit, or go into the flower garden and kind of play around with bouquets and things like that. I always have to go out in the evening regardless and water all of my flowers, because I go crazy in the spring and I buy all of these flowers and plant them all, and then midsummer, whenever it's hot and humid and drought like and it's not rained, I've got to go through and make sure that everything has been watered and taken care of so that it doesn't die. But I go out there and sometimes I'll take the scraps from dinner and feed the pigs or the chickens and just kind of check on that stuff and just enjoy that time outside. I mean, that's part of savoring the season of summer, is actually getting outside and enjoying the weather and taking it all in and walking around and seeing the beautiful flowers and watching the bees and seeing the sunset. And I know that in the wintertime I'm going to miss that warmth of the summer and being outside and just enjoying that time, because in the wintertime obviously it's a lot colder and we don't spend as much time outside. So this time of year I really do like to try to get out there with the family and with the kids and just enjoy that time together and sit out on the patio and relax and take the sun in and all of those things, because I know that the fall season is quickly approaching, and here today in Kentucky it actually feels kind of like fall. It got down into the 50s last night, so we had a really cool start to the morning, which was really wonderful because we got out there and just enjoyed that beautiful weather, and that's what we're doing today. So I just love that. I want to take it in and I want to savor the season and be present with it. So thank you all so much for watching our videos and following along on our channel. We plan to share all of our farming and homesteading and all of our cooking here on our channel, The Bluegrass Family. We would love for you to like and subscribe to our channel, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.